Commencing tactical assessment. Red Chinese threat detected. Democracy is non-negotiable. Engaging Red Chinese aggressors. Freedom is the sovereign right of every American. Death is a preferable alternative to communism. Self-destruct.
Do you want me to do the intro?
I was figured we'd both do our own intro. Actually, this could be the intro, honestly.
This is the intro, me throwing cell phones and being mad about how I can't live stream this podcast.
Or just us talking about, like, possibly doing an intro.
How fucking meta do you want to get here, man? How meta? We can go
We're
as
just
meta
going
as...
deeper the longer we do this.
Well, don't leave it all in. Alright, I mean, we can just talk about stuff. I mean,
yeah.
It's like, I'll just say radical centrist a whole bunch throughout the entire podcast, and you can just, like, cut it into a montage.
Yeah, I guess.
I'm insane.
Okay, so... what to talk about?
We were talking
I think a good light story to start on is that one that we read about them sabotaging the gun buyback programs.
Ooh, wasn't that a couple? Yes, let me pull that up.
Yeah.
Who's sabotaging? Pro-gun. Oh, yes, because they're making guns.
Yeah.
And sending them in.
So,
I mean, I think that's a valid form of protest.
Well, their primary argument that I've been seeing is that nobody is going to be selling back a gun that they bought themselves for such a low price. Most of these gun buyback programs, they offer at most, like even the best ones offer like $200 for a gun.
Yeah.
So their big argument is that most likely the guns that they are going to be getting are going to be stolen guns, and in some way they could actually be encouraging the stealing of guns in order to sell them back for $200 a pop.
I could see that. I could definitely see how somebody's mind would go that way, especially when, just in form of protest, people are building these very improvised guns to get these $50 and $100 gift cards that this article here was talking about.
Let me see.
Wait, hold on now. This article that you linked me is from December in 2014.
Yeah, but they are also doing it again recently. This is just one of the first articles I found. Let me see if I can find a newer one.
Those mechanical clickies. Oh god, you're just doing it on purpose.
I'll take it out in post-production.
Don't over-edit it, because you're gonna go nuts.
Here, I found one from 2016. Oh, wait, no, that's somebody saying it's indefensible to be against gun buyback programs.
People are nuts, man. It's like... As we said, this is the radical centrists, and
Quit
so
doing the voice.
I know I did it on purpose, you idiot. And well, the idea being that, well, if we want to kind of place ourselves on a chart, we're both very, very close to center. With Chaos here being a little bit more libertarian than I am,
but still left wing.
Yeah, but we're not far from center, and some of our ideas swing to the right. A little bit, none of it very far from the center. Like, it's like we draw some very clear lines. There's no identity politics, at least for me.
Yeah.
No identity politics, no racial supremacy. It's like, fuck all that. You're insane if you think that's a good idea. Which I probably shouldn't say that, considering my nickname is Insane.
True.
But at the same time, it's like you just don't want to give the government too much power. It's not a good idea.
Yeah, in general, better to keep the power in as few hands as possible, or as many hands as possible. I mean, the lower down it goes, the better.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this last night with the states' rights and how you want to give most of the power back to them, and I agree with you. It's just that I'm a little bit of I'm a little bit worried more about educational standards for children, different things like that, and if the states do a good job of it, then they did a good job of it, and then I'm fine. But I don't want to discount the idea of making it a national standard, at least here in the United States, as an option if the states prove that they can't handle.
Well, like I said, anytime the government's ever gotten to education, it doesn't seem to go great.
No, I agree with you, which is why I definitely want to keep it at least give it another go of keeping it into the hands of the state, because they just don't do anything that approximates evidence-based education. They just kind of do whatever the fuck they feel would be best for the children, and it's like, no, you can't legislate based on your feelings. You need to find some evidence that proves. Yeah. I don't know.
Education's a very difficult thing, and generally when things are difficult, it's not great to centralize them, similar to, economy.
No,
It's such a complex system that, it's worth having a large variation in ways that it's done in order to see what works best.
Yeah, you're right. That's the thing I like the most about the U.S. is, you don't like one of the states, well, there's 49 other for you to pick from. Which I guess the EU's
there's 47, because who's going to move to Alaska or Hawaii?
That's fair. Alaska's too cold and Hawaii's too expensive.
And really far away. You might as well just go to Japan.
Well, I mean, you can do 40. Well, we should make Puerto Rico a state, but okay, sure.
I guess you could technically live there, and you're still a U.S. citizen, so.
It's not terribly far away.
No, actually, Puerto Rico's very close. Okay, so we got some other ones. You want to talk about one of your news things that you pulled up?
Blub, blub. Do the GDPR Europe.
Compliance or lawsuit?
What?
Which link?
Oh, I was going to both of them. Talk about both the lawsuits and the general laws they've enacted.
Okay.
So, the GDPR is Europe's General Data Protection Regulation, and it's a good thing, man. It's these.
Are we sure it's a good thing?
I'm not sure it's a good thing, but I know that doing something about it is good, because a lot of these companies are just. It's like, I do not like this being spied on by anybody, government or corporation. And I even have problems with targeted ads. It's
yeah. I have a bit of a issue with that as well.
It's
but,
like you're basically building a psychological profile on me for the purpose of. It's like, it's not the targeted ads that I mind. Like, those are actually kind of useful sometimes.
Yeah, honestly.
But what my issue is the sort of data they have to collect on you in order to effectively use targeted ads can be used for a lot more than just targeted ads.
Well, the thing is actually a lot of the data that they collect on you really isn't that identifying. It's just that they get so much non-identifying information that they can build a psychological profile. It's actually really interesting.
Well, that's what I was saying. It's like, but it's like, it's not that anybody can identify me with it. It's that they have this psychological profile of me. And then what are they going to do with that? What if a very authoritarian government makes them hand that information over, and then they can group us all into our little psychological profiles, and then it's just evidence-based identity politics rather than race or gender.
Well, for me, my only problem that I really have with all the data collection is whenever it comes to like Google collecting data from your Gmail inbox, or like Facebook collecting data from private messages.
I mean,
that's really outside of that. Everything else is public. Anybody could collect the data outside of that.
I mean, that's fair. But the thing is that it's like, if you use Chrome, they're like watching what you click on, and if you use if you have Facebook app on your phone, there's evidence that they're listening to you through your microphone.
Yeah, we should definitely move more towards kind of like the traditional sense of privacy. Like a lot of the privacy laws that we have in the U.S. Stipulate that if you have like a reasonable assumption of privacy, that it's illegal to invade it.
Right, but that's not extended to our electronic device, which is
that's what I'm
thinking.
Important. That's what I was saying. We should probably go back to something like that, because like they have laws like you can't put cameras or a microphone in like a bathroom or bedroom. Because you have a reasonable assumption of privacy in those areas. And
your cell phone, and most of my thinking was brought into this by an interview I saw with Elon Musk, where your cell phone is an extension of yourself at this point. It's like being able to access the internet whenever you want, being able to write things down. It's like, it's just a very, very distantly extended part of your mind, because you use it to remind you of things, you use it to... It's like, it's enhancement in a very primitive way.
Yeah, and you do have a certain amount of privacy that you would assume when you're using your home computer. Like, you would at least assume that anything you didn't specifically send out to the public isn't going to be monitored.
Right, that's just not how it's playing out.
Yeah, because, I know that Google says that they're not doing it every time somebody claims that they are, but I can guarantee you there are multiple times that I've been talking about something in regular life, and then I see an ad for it later.
Yeah, and Facebook, Amazon's doing it now.
Well, they claim that they're not.
They claim that they're not, but somebody is. They
claim that they're not, and there is a possibility that it might just be that you ended up searching that thing because it was on your mind.
Right,
but
you don't remember
still,
it.
Still,
there's a lot of anecdotal evidence out there showing...
Well, anecdotal, or anecdotes. You can't really call an anecdote evidence.
Well, I guess that's fair.
The plural of anecdote is not data.
There's a lot of anecdotes out there saying that makes me think we should definitely consider that this is what they're doing. And it's like, if we can't trust again, as an American citizen, if we can't trust the U.S. government to... we can never trust the U.S. government, but if we can't trust the U.S. government to protect us against these corporations, how do we expect them to protect us against some of our more technologically advanced, the other technologically advanced countries out there? Like, all of this stuff with Russia. It's like, a good hacker in Russia, a state-sponsored hacker in Russia might be able to do a lot of damage to individuals in the United States via the internet. Honestly,
most of the kind of so-called hacking out of Russia has really just been social engineering.
Yeah, that's fair, but it's also, that is because...
Same with China.
That's because large amounts of cheap labor make it, in social engineering being something relatively easy to teach.
Well, it's mostly just propaganda campaigns, which, if anybody's good at propaganda, it's Russia. Yeah. They've got how many years doing it? Like 40, 60, maybe 70?
Oh, they've been doing it since the early 20th century.
Well, probably around like the 1940s. They've had pretty heavy propaganda. It falls apart every time one of their people ends up in America, though.
That's fair. Well, it's like I have a copy of the Gulag Archipelago on my desk that I've been meaning to read.
Yeah,
and I'm
you really
sure
should.
And I'm sure that will go. That it will have something to say about that.
And I keep telling you, you need to read City of Thieves. They really do a good job.
I will. That's Crime and Punishment.
It's fiction, but it is historical fiction. It was written with a lot of research done.
Yeah, and I do believe that's the best way to really, really, truly understand something.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to...
Well, we never really got very deep into GDPR.
Well, I mean,
we kind of went on a bit of a tangent.
I honestly don't. It's like the most of the articles I say don't have anything...
Well, here's some interesting stuff.
All right.
The most important changes will be happening behind the scenes. The GDPR also sets rules for how companies share data after it's been collected, which means companies have to rethink how they approach analytics, logins, and above all, advertising. A single site could easily have 20 ad targeting partners, often invisible to the person whose data is being shared, but the GDPR adds complex new requirements for any company that gets user data secondhand, requiring a lot more transparency on what a company is doing with your data. As a result, all of those partners have to be brought into the open, and their contracts have to be rewritten to comply with the GDPR. That means unearthing a notoriously messy system that has been built on the idea that there is no cost to sharing data. So, it sounds like what it's going to do is although it's not going to stop them from sharing data, it's going to make it much, much more difficult to share data.
And
between third-party
and
companies.
Approachable.
Yeah, so it looks like basically you'll be able to see exactly who's getting your data. What I'm curious about is what happens when those third parties try to share it with another third party.
This is a real question. I think that once it's in the hands of a third party, though, I mean, it's kind of too late, because they can just kind of disseminate it however they'd like.
Well, not if they're trying to follow the GDPR specifications.
I mean, that's fair.
Because it sounds like it would cover them as well.
Well, then they get fined if they don't follow the rules.
Honestly, I think the biggest law that we need to do is make end-user license agreements far more human-readable.
Agreed. It should not take you 30 hours to read one out loud.
Or just totally get rid of the entire concept since they're not legally enforceable.
That's fair.
But, So, yeah, so basically, it does seem that it's got some good things for sure. I'd be worried about what possibly some of the, what do they call it? Some of the dog-eared notes on it would be. Right,
and that's all what sucks about putting hands in the power of the government. But anybody's government. But it's also sad that we have to rely on the European Union to start enforcing these things before our government will do it.
Well, I don't actually know how often the EU dog ears things. I know at least in the U.S. government we do it all the time.
That's another thing that needs to be human readable. Laws.
Like here's a funny one that we dog eared recently. They were trying to pass a law in Florida where it would ban offshore drilling. But in that same law, it would also ban the use of e-cigs indoors.
What the fuck, man?
Yeah. That just sounds like a way to stop that law.
It's like, I only need... It's like, what we need is a... Well, I'm sure there is a an agency out there that just looks through these laws and goes, okay, this thing has things dog-eared on it, don't pass it. But then again, nothing would ever get passed if we tried to pull something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember.
It's ridiculous.
There was some political philosopher, I can't remember exactly who it was, but basically what he said was that as soon as you need lawyers, your laws have gone too far. That basically laws should be easily understandable by the average person.
At least the laws that affect the average person.
Yeah, well, pretty much pretty much any law can be boiled down to an easily readable concept. I
mean,
there are very few laws that basically go outside of killing and stealing. Outside of that, there's really not much in the way of...
And you can really fold killing underneath stealing.
Yeah, you can. And basically all the other laws are just kind of going into further depth on how you shouldn't kill and steal. Or, beat the hell out of somebody. Basically it's like, they're pretty much all reasonably understandable. The problem is that I
actually want to clarify that for anybody who may listen to this. It's like, so for example, you might think, well, how is environmental protection stealing? It's like, well, you're stealing the future. In some ways, you're stealing the future from the people who have to use that land later. Because you're damaging it, they're going to have to pay for it. You're giving the future consequences for people that aren't you. And how is killing stealing? Well, you're stealing somebody's life, even though you don't get to keep it.
Yeah, this is actually a concept that I got out of the Kite Runner, which I'm not sure if you've ever read it.
I've heard of it, but I haven't read it. No.
Basically, it is about a kid who is in, I believe, Iraq when...
I have read that. I'm sorry.
When they got invaded by the Russians.
Yeah, I read that in high school. One of my teachers was...
Yeah, and pretty much the father, I believe they called him Baba, he was talking to his son and he was saying, every single crime can be broken down to just a form of stealing.
Right, yes, I remember this.
And that's kind of where I got that concept from. And I think it's actually a really concise, easy way to explain how law should be built.
Right. If you're stealing something or you're... I guess...
Everything comes down to stealing. Killing, you're stealing somebody's life. Assaulting somebody, you're stealing their personal freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is. And so the fact that you have to have lawyers... It's like, I have to sit down and literally print out 1,000 pages to understand the law on something. It's like, I understand that budgets are incredibly complex, and when you're dealing with things like healthcare and environmental protections and various other extremely complex issues, but honestly, that's why we have agencies for those things. That's why we have the EPA, or that's why we should have the EPA. That's why do we have a healthcare agency?
I'm pretty sure.
If we don't, we should.
I think that's just the CDC.
Is it the CDC? Okay.
I believe so, because the CDC, at least up until recently, they even covered things like rape and gun crime.
I guess they because of how we work here in the U.S. with the companies, they tell the companies what they have to do and how to give out healthcare, how to do these things. But I guess so. Yeah, I mean, we've got an agency for that. So why is the law so complex?
Well, a lot of... I think that there are a lot of things that are laws that I almost feel like we need separate distinctions between what's going to affect a citizen and then what is just a regulation.
That's fair, because I guess that's what the
right now
are supposed to do. The agencies put regulations in place while the legislature puts in...
Right now, it's this big monolithic thing that's these are the laws, figure out which ones apply to you.
Whereas you think we should split it into laws and regulations.
Yeah, I still think that legislature should handle those regulations because it is lawmaking.
Right.
But it would definitely simplify it for your average citizen if they had a very obvious go-to system where it's here's the laws, what do I need to not do? Also, one of the big problems is that there's just so many laws that there's always some law that you're breaking.
Right.
Similar to driving laws. There's so many of them. There's no way you could follow all of them.
Wow.
I think most states have well over 1,000 to 1,500 different specific driving laws,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them just aren't even enforced.
Right.
They're just there so that you can use them.
Also, like, things where people are taking advantage of it, like small towns basically turning their town into a speed trap in order to keep themselves alive. And it's like, I get that your city is struggling and that nobody wants to go to it anymore because we built the highway system, and that's unfortunate for your citizens, but you don't get to be predatory because of that.
Not the highway system, the interstate system.
Interstate system. Apologies.
Something that you will learn through the course of this show is that Insane does not know how to English.
And you are pedantic as shit.
It works out.
Let's move slightly away from politics, and we'll look at the way that this will affect, at least American society. Elon Musk's Boring Company. They did a live stream a couple days ago, really hashing out some of the things they're working on. Did you see any of this?
I didn't see the live stream, but I have seen some people talking about some of the stuff.
Okay, so I'll summarize it here real quick. Basically, the Boring Company bought a boring machine, which is a tunnel digging machine, not a machine that bores you.
Well, it depends on what you're into, but it could bore you.
It is not its main purpose. They some of the interesting changes they're making is and the way companies have done boring in the past, and the reason why it's been so expensive, is that these machines were diesel, and you're basically creating an air-sealed tunnel under the ground as you dig. So you need extreme amounts of ventilation, you have to remove the dirt from the tunnels, and everything was gas and electric powered, gas powered. And they're moving it all over to electric now, because Elon Musk and Tesla, because why the fuck not?
Man, that just seems like a lot of torque for electric. But then again, he's pulled off some crazy shit before.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how it all works. If I remember correctly, I think the machine itself was actually electric. It was diesel electric.
It just had a diesel generator,
right,
generating the electric. Okay.
That I'm not sure if that's true, but that would
make sense.
That would, yeah, kind of like a ship. That was my understanding from the live stream. Please, if anybody is out there and hears this, correct me if I'm wrong.
If anybody is listening.
If anybody listens.
We should just always assume we have no listeners.
No. It's a good thing to assume. Okay, so they're moving everything over to electric, so they don't have to do the ventilation anymore, which is apparently a massive improvement.
Yeah, I would imagine, because there's a huge amount of logistics that goes into digging ventilation shafts. Setting up the ventilation shafts, getting the fuel down there. Yeah.
It's very interesting.
But then you're going to have the problem of getting batteries down there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what they're doing.
Unless they're just going to run like a really brutal extension cable. Yeah,
Elon said that was extremely cost prohibitive to do that because of how much copper you needed. So they're doing that. Instead of purchasing concrete segments to reinforce the tunnel, they have figured out how to make them out of the dirt they've dug out of the ground.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Not to mention, they are, instead of paying somebody to haul the dirt away, so you'd have to have somebody haul the concrete segments in, and then pay somebody to haul the dirt away, they are using the same process to form cinder blocks out of the dirt. Which, according to Elon, is those cinder blocks, and they had one with them, Did
it look like a red brick or a standard cinder block?
It looked like a red brick.
Okay.
And he claimed it was 5 times stronger than your average cinder block. And that they were going to sell them on site for 10 cents a piece.
Wow. That's a, man, the forever capitalist that is Elon Musk.
Yes, he is the,
he figures out how to monetize everything.
Yes. Apparently he's going to be using that to make giant adult-sized Lego sets. And so you're going to be able to purchase one and build like a mini pyramid and, Sphinx in your backyard.
I love Musk.
Yes.
So one of my favorite things about the Boring Company is that, if I remember correctly, they named their main drill Gary.
They actually maybe they named the drills Gary. I know I believe they named Gary, and he is the mascot.
I'm pretty sure they named one of their drills Gary because they want it to move as fast as like a really intense snail. Yeah,
their goal is 0.3 miles an hour,
which is insanely fast compared to old methods.
Oh yeah. I think he said that the drill before was, if you could get it running continuously, which you couldn't, the drill was a 0.03 mile per hour drill.
Oof, man, that's slow.
Yes, but he, and again, this is the Elon Musk claims, but I mean, time isn't good, but he generally does everything he claims he will.
Yeah, he's not necessarily always hitting his scheduled release dates, but he usually pulls it off.
He believes that he can get a tunnel drilled for the same cost per mile to put down a lane of a highway.
Jeez, wow.
And at that point he said, if we can get it there, what's the point of building roads?
Pretty much, yeah. Because I really do love the idea of the multi-level road systems. Because like I could easily see somewhere like LA or New York really benefiting from something like that.
Yeah, definitely New York, especially if they can get the tunnels down to the price that they're talking about.
I think LA more so, because LA is well known for its traffic.
Right. And so apparently this also solves the issue with the Hyperloop that everybody likes to complain about, where they're not going to be able to sustain a vacuum. Apparently these tunnels, when dug, are air and water sealed up to 5 atmospheres.
Yes.
5 atmospheres. And so if you pull the inside of the tunnel for a vacuum, it just brings it down to 4 atmospheres of water and air permeability, and you can handle that at about 30 feet underground. So if they can get it so if they can get the other parts of the Hyperloop working,
yeah, but think how long it would take to dig a tunnel from like the west coast to the east coast at 0.3 miles per hour.
I mean, that's fair, but that's assuming you're doing it with a single drill.
It would take literally years.
I mean, yeah, but like I said, but that's assuming you have a single drill. If he can start pumping out these boring machines, then every city starts connecting every other city nearby to them, and then also building those little. They're not exactly subways because subways have to stop at each stop. These are like point to point little mini buses.
It's more like a monorail.
Yeah, kind of. It's very odd because so basically they're gonna have parking space sized ins and outs, and the thing just comes out of the ground. You get in it, it goes under the ground, and then it just takes you somewhere.
Yeah, this could also really be a huge benefit for China, actually.
Oh god, they would. China, Japan, the Asian countries.
Specifically with China, they're actually starting to run into really heavy congestion issues, because pretty much what happened was, up until I think it was around 15 to 20 years ago, might have been 10. Basically, everybody was poor in the country.
Right.
They were still living under communist rule. And now that they've started to turn more towards capitalism, basically everyone in the country owns a car. Well, and also another thing about China is that I know that I'm not trying to say anything racist or anything like that, but they're really fucking bad at driving in China.
Well, I mean, their laws kind of make it so with the whole, you know, if you hurt somebody, you're responsible for them for the rest of your life.
Well, no, it's not just that. It's not just that. That is a problem. But they also have almost, because I was actually, I was watching a YouTuber who actually lives in China and does business. And he was talking about that it's almost like a point of pride to not be able to drive well.
Is it a cultural thing?
Yeah, it's kind of a cultural thing. They are extremely aggressive drivers.
Interesting.
And he was saying that, like, you know, if you come to China, you're gonna see a dead body in a wreck. Like, it's gonna happen.
Jesus.
He was like, you know, you can
Sounds
live
like Miami.
He was basically saying you can live your entire life in the U.S. and never see an actual wreck where, like, somebody died. You'll see mostly fender benders or, like, a car flipped, but the person came out okay.
Right.
He was saying in China you'll constantly see, like, cars that fell over into, like, who were ran off the road into, like, ditches or things like that. So having something like underground tunnels set up for everyone to drive on, because they're supposed to be single lane, it would actually prevent...
So these things you don't actually drive on them.
Well, no, he had two options. He had either driving in them or having some sort of, like, pad that would move your car through them.
It was only the pad.
I thought he also talked about driving as well.
No, because it's going to be... You're going to be doing over... I think it was 200 to 250 miles per hour in these tunnels.
Oh, okay. So, even better. Basically, if you're having these, like, single-lane underground roads, that's definitely going to reduce traffic incidents massively.
Yeah.
Somewhere like China, where they are such aggressive drivers. They'll just be driving kind of the short hop from their exit to wherever their final destination is.
Right, basically. You'd find one of these tray things, just pull your car up onto it, and it would take you to your final destination. Which, I don't know, I think that if the system works as well as, well, Elon Musk would like you to believe, then he's gonna kind of put Tesla out of business.
Well, not necessarily, if he starts making self-driving cars.
I mean, that's fair, but I understand that it, like, because Tesla's kind of like a short-term thing. It's like, because if I put his, like, dream together from everything that I can tell he's doing about his companies, especially in the transportation industry, it's like you're gonna come out of your house and you're gonna walk to, like, it's gonna be a short hop to the nearest little space that has your little tiny bus in it. You tell it where you want to go, you get in it, it takes you to where you're going, right? If you want to go from city to city, you go to the Hyperloop area, and then you get out, you get into the Hyperloop thing, and it takes you to the next city that you're looking to go to.
Well, he's always said that he didn't really want to start Tesla. He started Tesla as a way to kick the electric car industry in the ass.
And I guess like he's doing it mostly now for the batteries.
Well, also, like I said, he started it basically as a way he wanted to compete with other car companies in order to force them to reduce their prices.
On electric cars.
Yeah, because he's wanting to get the Tesla down to, I believe, $30,000.
The Model 3 Basic is $35,000, and the fully loaded is about 77.
Yeah, I think he wanted, like, his initial goal was $30,000, and then I think he said that if it was at all possible, he wanted to get it down to like $10,000 or $15,000 for a brand new car.
Right.
Which seems a little optimistic.
Well, if he builds, well, the thing is that it's the biggest price is the electric engines and the batteries, and the thing is that I guess with these carts and with the Hyperloops, these are still electric engines and batteries.
Yes, but they are probably a bit more robust. Mm-hmm. Since really when you're building an infrastructure system, price isn't nearly as much of an issue.
Right.
So they're probably much more, much tougher. than what you would put into a car because you just can't afford to put something quite that tough into a car.
Right. But I mean, that would be...
Hence the reason the original Tesla was, $90,000.
Right. This is why... Well, if he's able to, like he said, he estimated if you did, that's like, we're getting into a little bit even. You know what? No, I'm gonna get away from this Elon Musk circle jerk and attack him a little bit on this, just so people don't think it's like I see a lot about him. It's like this news thing that he's doing is with the public voting of the journalists is interesting. Have you seen this?
No.
Because he basically just wants to start a site like Rate My Professor, but for Rate My Journalist.
That's actually not a bad idea.
Right, and it's good for judging public opinion of journalists, but that's all it could do, and that's all it probably will be able to do.
Well, that's all that you really need to worry about with journalists, honestly. Because there's no other, viable way to rate a journalist.
I mean, that's fair. You just have to, look at the reviews and go, okay, are people hating him because he's saying he has an opinion, or are they hating them because they're just, they're so
lying.
Incredibly biased? And it's two different things, unfortunately.
Honestly,
it stems from the media, very uncharitably viewing Tesla and displaying Tesla. It's like Elon Musk is he's just a dude who has some money trying to do his best.
Honestly, I think the reason people are so kind of like you said, have such a circle jerk about him is that I think it's just because he's the shining example of what a capitalist should be.
Right, and so people either hate him or love him because of it.
Because he's actually putting his money to use. He's still managing to make a profit off of it while not harming people.
It's like, do you know? Okay, so
although I hear he's a bit of a dick of a boss.
But well, here's the thing, though.
He micromanages a lot.
Here's the thing, though, and somebody pointed this out to me. It's like you don't really see too many people coming out and saying that. You see the occasional person coming out and saying that, and then the news latches onto it and writes a big article about it. But if you ever read any of those articles, it's like the person doesn't have anything really substantial to say, just that, he's micromanaging and overbearing, and he requires a lot of his employees, and, they're gonna make you work overtime a lot. Well, it's like, yeah, but they pay you for that overtime. One.
True.
It's like they're not avoiding paying you for that overtime.
Well, not necessarily. If they're salaried employees, they don't get paid for overtime.
Well, I mean, this is the personal responsibility that we like to talk about. It's like it is your job to negotiate your salary. And I do disagree with the idea that salaried employees can legally be let to not be paid overtime, but at the same time, there's nothing saying that as a salaried employee you can't be paid overtime.
Well, I think there's two different types of salaried employee.
At least
one can be paid over.
In Florida, it's below $50K.
No, I mean nationally. There's two specific types of salaried employee. There is. Oh, I can't remember what it's called, but basically there's one that can be paid overtime, and then there's one that you cannot pay overtime to.
Oh, okay.
You still have the option to pay overtime to them, but you don't have to.
Right.
I can't remember what it's called.
But it's like, honestly, but as a employee, you should do your best to negotiate your pay so that if you're going to be getting into a lot of overtime, yeah, they can't. I don't believe they can fire you for working less than 40 hours, can they? I mean, people can fire you for whatever reason they want, and they'll find a way if they don't like how you're conducting yourself. It depends
on the state. Each state has different laws on how and when you can fire people. So, in some states, yeah, you probably could just fire somebody for working under $30 an hour, if it's a right-to-work state.
Under 40 hours.
Yeah, under 40 hours. Like a right-to-work state, they can fire you for anything they want as long as they don't say why they're firing you.
Right.
If they say why they're firing you, then they have to defend it.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting.
Yeah, so as long as they just don't give you a reason, then they can just fire you for whatever the hell they want.
Right. See, and this is part of the thing that I was talking about last night with you, is I was always on the well-regulated capitalism bandwagon. Like, this is the way well-regulated capitalism, like, markets work pretty well. You just can't let the government, it's the government's job to break up monopolies and make sure that the corporations don't screw people over so terribly. But then again, you gotta understand that that's kind of the corporation. You gotta understand the corporation's perspective about this, because it's their job to make a profit, and if you don't set the proper regulations up, then you're never going to. Then the corporations are going to break rules and do things that aren't good for the people. But now I also think that a necessary part of a well-regulated capitalist system is a well-regulated workers' union system. This is things where they're not allowed, like, so for example, it's like the difference between New York and Florida. New York has given the workers' unions far too much freedom. And then in Florida, you don't have freedom as a workers' union, so you don't really have workers' unions. And I think that the balance is somewhere right in the middle. And I think the balance is somewhere in the middle of these two things, because it's just it's like putting checks and balances into the private sector.
Yeah, definitely I'm more on the well-regulated side, though I tend to lean more towards kind of free market in general.
Well, yeah, as free, but, literally as free as you can make the market, without it being anarcho-capitalism.
Yeah, I think EPA regulations, very important. Although I think they can be a little bit overreaching at times. I think generally they're important. We should have them.
The cost of freedom is endless vigilance.
And then like breaking up monopolies, which honestly our government has not been doing a good job at.
No, the prime example would be Time Warner,
cable companies,
cable company Comcast.
Honestly, I think a big thing that would really help with our society is if we actually went into more depth in school, that you can vote with your wallet. A lot of people don't do that. If we could get, which this is just a total pipe dream.
Right.
But if we could get even 50% of the customers of Comcast to just not pay their bill 1 month, that would hurt them.
A lot.
Yeah, even probably 20 or 30%. It would be enough to get their attention.
Right.
But the problem is that people just they're
too scared. They don't think that it's effective.
Yeah, they just have this.
Many different reasons.
It's basically what I imagine is it's basically the what's the term for it? The innocent bystander issue, where they're like, well, the other guy's gonna do it, so why should I do it?
Yeah, I'm definitely
people aren't doing things themselves. They just hope that somebody else will do it.
Yeah,
and because of that, we can't get these large movements working. Having basically a consumer revolt against either cable companies or phone companies. Because I would much rather see it done that way than through regulation. I mean, I'd much rather see the customer saying, "No, we're not going to fucking do this."
Right. I think that there's if the government was set up properly, and this is part of what I'm talking about with the when I was talking with you, was with single transferable vote, especially in the states, they making it so that the representatives properly look like what the beliefs and political beliefs of the citizens are. We've talked about it, how, it runs into issues when you talk about, state governments and national governments, but at least on the local level, single transferable vote seems like an excellent solution.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how to...
Really, the biggest thing that we need to work on is, we need to work on the fact that the minorities in a lot of these states, their voices are totally covered up. Like in California, if you're going to vote for Republican, that's a thrown away vote.
Right.
In Georgia, if you're going to vote Democrat, it's a thrown away vote.
Right.
These are people whose voices aren't being heard.
Or when people co-opt smaller groups, especially very minority groups, extremely minority groups, for their own purposes, and then is like, oh, I'm doing it for their good.
Yeah, I really don't like that. Let people speak for themselves.
It's like for example, I was talking about it's back when I think it was Malcolm X organized the 1 Million Men March.
Might have been. I'll go ahead and search it.
Okay. And during that, I mean, that's what this proved. It's like you got 1 million men to come out of any group. Like in this situation, it was African Americans, but of any group.
It was called by Louis Farrakhan.
Louis Farrakhan,
who is formerly known as Louis X, is an American religious leader, black nationalist, activist, and social commentator.
Right, so he brought forth...
He is the leader of the religious group Nation of Islam and served as the minister of major mosques in Boston and Harlem.
Interesting, okay. But, okay, his specific beliefs was not the point of my story. My point of my story is that if you can organize 1 million people to do anything, especially when there's that extremely subtle threat of violence. It's like, and that's the important thing. It's not
necessarily, not a subtle threat of violence. It's reminding them that there's more of us than there are of them.
Right. It's well, I mean, violence in many different ways, but it's like, we have power and we will use it as a group.
Well, we are the government, which I think a lot of people forget.
It's like, yes, I mean, the government is just a forever revolving door of people coming in and out. It's like the changes can be made. It's not impossible, and it's not as static and a monolithic of a structure as people like to make it.
Well, the government's basically just it's basically just... Oh, what would be the term? I almost want to say condensation, which I guess that works. Condense. It's basically where we condense all of the rights to violence in order to keep it out of the hands of the average citizen.
That makes sense.
That's basically what the government is. It's basically just a way to make sure that no one person is saying, hey, yeah, we should throw this guy in jail, or we should go to war.
Right.
At least in the U.S., that's what it's for.
Right, and for the force, the violence to be used humanely as possible. It's using least possible force in every situation.
Well, if that's what the people want.
I mean, that's fair, but I mean, that really should be what we're going for. True.
But I'm just saying, if that's what the people want, it's just a way to make sure that the power of force is basically not just held in one person's hands. That's the only way that we can maintain something like a democratic republic like we have.
Well, it's like, all laws have the force of law behind them. If your law did not have the force of law behind them, nobody would listen to you.
Which is just the condensed power of all the citizens.
No, yeah.
Oh, man, are the libertarians going to hate us about this one.
Well, it's like, but then again, here's the important thing. It's like, here's the important thing about saying that and being, rather libertarian about it is you have to understand that is what the government is, which is why we don't want them to have anything but the absolute necessary power. Yeah.
Which, we disagree on what the absolute necessary power might be.
Well, okay, I don't think we do, because here, let me say something, and let me see if you agree. I think that the government should have the least amount of power possible, but what the least amount...
The federal government specifically.
No, all governments. Okay. All governments should have the least amount of power possible, but where you draw the line for what is necessary for power and what is not necessary for power needs to be evidence-based.
Well, for me, the government's basically just there to maintain rights.
Right, but with rights come responsibilities. It's like you have the freedom of speech, but you have the responsibility to not get offended every single time somebody says something that you don't like.
Well, no, actually, somebody's perfectly allowed to be offended as long as there's no power behind them saying that they can't be offended.
But in the eyes of law, that's what I mean. It's like you're not allowed to act on your offense. Not in a I'm going to throw somebody into jail sort of way.
Well, the right to freedom of speech. Well, the thing about the rights is that you can't have conflicting rights.
Right.
So you have the right to freedom of speech, which in and of itself precludes the right to not be offended. I am using that word right.
Okay. It includes.
No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the right to freedom of speech precludes the right to not be offended.
Yeah, because it's just.
And then
if what you're saying doesn't offend somebody, then you're not really talking about anything.
And I'm actually not sure if we have a right to bodily autonomy. I am not 100% on that.
Bodily autonomy.
Yeah. Basically, the right to not be attacked by somebody else.
Well, wouldn't that
I don't believe we do have a right to that. I guess that would probably be covered by the right to self-defense.
Yeah.
So, basically, you have the right to freedom of speech, and if you attack me because of my freedom of speech, I have the right to defend myself.
Well, that's like, some of the states have mutual combat laws on their on the books. If you're picking on somebody and you're attacking them and they're not like reciprocating and like they're not forced to and they're not responding or it's completely unprovoked, yes, that's assault. But if two men get in a bar fight because they're both a little tipsy and beat the shit out of each other, they don't go to jail for felonies.
I would actually argue that the other shouldn't be assault.
But like if somebody's I phrased it incorrectly.
Harassment, maybe you meant?
Yeah, if they're being harassed and harassed physically, which is.
Well, physically, yes, but as long as it never goes past verbal, I don't think anyone ever has the right to attack somebody physically. If it's like something that just keeps going on and on, then it becomes harassment.
Right.
But like a one-off situation, somebody talking shit to you at a party or a bar or something.
Right. No. Harassment is repeated.
It's over time.
Repeated, provable harassment. It's like, it's one of those things. You know it when you see it. It's not somebody.
I don't like it when you see it laws.
I'm not saying the law should be based off you know it when you see it, but I'm saying harassment. It's like, it's just absurd.
Okay, so So, harassment covers a wide range of behaviors of an offensive nature. It is commonly understood as behavior that disturbs or upsets and is characteristically repetitive. There you go.
It's like,
so that falls outside of the idea of like freedom of speech. You say one shitty thing to somebody one time. I don't think there should be anything stopping you from doing that.
It's like, I think we really should.
Other than social pressure, of course.
Right. But I also think that for something to be, that works under sexual harassment. It's like, if harassment is something that needs to be happened repeatedly, sexual harassment also is something that needs to be seen repeatedly.
Yeah, because there is definitely a big difference between sexual harassment and sexual assault.
Right, yeah, no, sexual assault only needs to happen once. That's touching, and that's a completely different set of rules. No touching. Yes, touching.
As socially inept nerds like us, we'll say some stupid shit every once in a while, and if somebody just corrects us, we'll usually stop.
Right. Well, that's the fear, man. The fear is you can't make that mistake because somebody will start screaming harassment. And if there's a gender difference, it's automatically sexual harassment. And that's what a lot of these people want to that's what these people want to I shouldn't say what these people is what some of the authoritarian far lefts seem to be aiming for.
What some people, so that we're not talking about a boogeyman.
Yeah, exactly. So there's some of the very far left authoritarians.
Some far right as well. I'd rather just say some people.
You think far?
There are some far right people that are very much like that. The Puritans and stuff like that.
I guess that's fair. That's fair. Okay, so any far directional authoritarians.
Pretty much. Yeah, there's puritanicalism on either side of the spectrum.
Horseshoe theory, man. Horseshoe theory.
It's not so much a horseshoe as just it's shitty to be either way.
There's some lines you don't cross, man.
Because you have like the among the feminists, you have like the TERFs,
right,
which are the trans exclusionary radical feminists, and then on the right you also have the basically equivalent of people that are just against trans people. And then,
right. It's like there's
there are also there are also some feminists on the left that actually there are right-wing feminists as well, but some of the left-wing feminists are even like against lesbians.
It's so odd. Well, I mean, this really comes strange. This comes down to some very serious individualism. It's like it's like, here's where we're gonna draw the line. It's like, diversity is fine. Specifically, race, gender, and religious diversity is not. It's like, if you want people to be diverse only on the basis of race, sex, and religion, then there's something wrong with your worldview. It's like, there is much more to people than those three things.
Well, actually, fun thing, a lot of the left actually doesn't like diversity of religion.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, a lot of them are pretty atheist. I was in that camp at one point, but I'm to the point where it's just like, have your religion, I don't give a shit.
Right. It's, well, I mean, we're so...
I might call you stupid, but I'm not going to try and legislate against you.
Yeah, but that's the thing. There's some difference there. It's the difference of harassment is when somebody repeatedly stands in your way, not when somebody makes a one-off comment.
So, something we're definitely going to have to work on this podcast is going off on massive tangents.
I don't think so. It's not necessarily a newscast.
True, but man, the tangents have been brutal. We've been on harassment for like 15 minutes now.
But I guess we're recording for an hour and 5 minutes. There's no way we've been talking about harassment for 15.
True. So, it felt like 15 minutes.
Alright, we'll move on to something else.
Can we move on to... Oh, we got some, like, interesting tech news. I feel like there was actually something I heard recently that was really cool.
Besides the GDPR?
Actually, apparently, I can't remember which company it is, but a company has recently released and has started manufacturing QLC NAND, which it was Toshiba, I believe. Yes.
Toshiba is making QLC RAM. What is QLC?
QLC is quad layer... Oh, I can't remember what the C is for. But pretty much what it is it allows you to put more memory into a more dense package.
Okay. So
it's a much denser form of memory storage.
So this is like 3D NAND for memory sticks?
No. This is not similar to 3D NAND. This is for SSDs.
Oh, this is for SSDs. Okay.
Yes, this is for SSDs. We've already had TLC triple layer. I wish I remember what the C stands for. Oh, cell. So quad level cell.
Versus triple level cell.
Yeah, so they are going to be releasing the hard drives very soon, and I think that the first hard drive they're going to be releasing is like 7.25 terabytes. For a 2.5 inch SSD. I was super excited when I heard about this.
Right.
And there was some other really cool tech news. I've been watching Linus's new Quick Bits, I believe it's called.
Interesting.
The one that they bought from NCX.
Right.
And NCIX, and they covered a couple really interesting things that I looked into, and now I can't remember them. Damn my shitty memory.
Well, it's like I'm not quite sure how much we want to get into the tech talk in this podcast.
Well, we can cover both things.
I mean, that's fair.
This is our interests. We're not making this podcast necessarily to just talk about politics. It's just we know that we're going to talk about politics a lot.
Yeah, all right, fair.
It's going to happen, but it's nice to kind of get to some lighter subjects, which I consider tech to be a much lighter subject.
Very much so. Unless we start getting into tech regulated, and then we're going to start tearing our hairs out in frustration about how the politicians handle our interests.
But yeah, they're talking about up to like I think 100 terabytes for a single 2.5 inch. But the first one they're going to be releasing is a 7.25 terabyte.
How much?
Probably expensive as all hell.
I mean, that's fair, but I mean, are we talking like 10 grand, or are we talking like 1.5 grand on Amazon?
Oh, and apparently what they're saying is that the endurance per terabyte is so low that it's not suitable for small capacity SSDs. So apparently it has worse endurance than TLC. So you win some, you lose some.
They'll figure it out.
Yeah.
The storage market is...
Oh no, that's what it was. It was Intel is actually releasing the first one, but Toshiba came up with the standard.
Interesting. Makes sense for them to work together.
So let's see. QLC NAND flash memory is now available, and Micron is now shipping the first solid state based on QLC NAND and enterprise SATA drive branded as the 5210 Ion series. This will join the TLC-based 5200 family as a low-cost tier with reduced write performance and endurance. So, like I said, win some, lose some.
Right. The storage industry is either going to boom or it's not.
Yeah, I feel like there's going to be a massive storage crash at sometime soon.
Let's see if they can. Let's see if they can keep those prices up, or so those prices down. Sorry.
Prices down? What do you mean down? They're like triple what they were.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Spinning Rust is getting cheaper though.
Yeah,
so
I mean
I guess
we're
that's
able to quite reliably find 8 terabyte hard drives for $150.
Yeah, I'm sitting here with a 32 terabyte server that I spent probably $1,000 on.
I think mine only has 24 terabytes.
32 with parity. What up?
Yeah. Yeah, but if I get up to you, that's $1,000 sounds about right.
Yeah. But geez, I'm almost feeling like we might be reaching the end.
Yeah, me too.
Because I'm feeling like I can't really think of stuff to talk about that's interesting.
No, I think we did a good one too.
So I guess
this was
all 0 or possibly 1 people listening.
all hopefully not 0 people.
Yeah, so I think we're gonna try and do this weekly.
Doing this weekly. All right, we can do it. We can do it. I believe in us.
Yeah, we can. We're trying to just do stuff. Because it's a lot easier once you get the inertia going.
Mm-hmm. And if we actually do get, it's like, honestly, we don't need many people to be like, hey, we're listening to your podcast to encourage us to keep going. Like,
well, I would like at least $1,000. Yeah,
1,000 people.
Yeah, I'd like at least 1,000 people. That's not that crazy.
I don't know, man.
There's some shitty YouTube channels with 1,000 people watching.
That one. So I was looking up radical centrist to make sure we weren't stepping on anybody's toes using this name. And there's a YouTube channel with an intro video with 22 subscribers, and that's the only video on this channel.
Well, on my personal YouTube channel, I have 2 subscribers, and I have no idea where they came from.
I think I have subscribers.
I have
11?
I have like 2 or 3 subscribers. I've uploaded literally 1 video, and it was like a shitty phone recording of a concert. And I ended up with 2 or 3 subscribers.
I don't know what to tell you. Alright,
Stop using the announcer voice,
God
bro.
damn it. This was Radical Centrism.
Yep, this was Radical Centrists. We will hopefully see you next week if we don't give up on this.
Already.
So, yeah.
Zero work ethic.
So goodbye and have a good week.
This was insane.
This was Chaos.
Bye.